Well, greetings and salutations, everybody. Welcome to the John Campea Show here on my YouTube channel. I am, of course, your host, John Campea, and it is an honor and a privilege to be joining you guys here today on this glorious Friday. We finally reached Friday, it's the end of the week. Now, to those of you who have great observational skills, you will know and notice that I am not in my studio. No, not at all. I'm not in my studio today, so I apologize in advance for any technical problems or any technical issues we may have along the ways today. See, it is the Thanksgiving Day weekend, but it is also my mother-in-law's birthday weekend. So Anne and I and my mother-in-law and sister, we went out of town. We're actually in Las Vegas because this is Anne's mom's favorite place to go. So we're in Las Vegas right now, and I am just making the best of it as I can from the hotel room that we're in. So I know some people are saying, John, there's a big glare behind you. Yes, I know there's a big glare behind me, but hey, what can I do? I mean, it's there. I'm in a hotel room. I'm doing the best I can to get the best light that I can. So my apologies in advance if today's show and maybe tomorrow's show don't live up to the technical excellence standards that I generally try to do. But hey, I wanted to make sure we still had a show today, so I'm up at 8 o'clock in the morning here in Las Vegas so we can do our show and talk some movies. So listen, guys, here's how today's show is going to go. In front of me, I've got a bunch of topics that I've picked out from emails that you guys have sent in to me. Now, how do you get a topic or an email on the John Campea Show? It's simple. You just email me anytime at john@thejohncampeashow.com. Put the word topic in the subject line or else I'm not going to see it. And then make sure you keep your topics and your emails to 90 words or less. Now, once that's done, I'm going to go to those of you guys who are watching live, and I'm going to take your live questions and thoughts and opinions here in the show. Simply tweet to me at John Campea. So hop on Twitter and send out a tweet. Start your tweet with at John Campea. Send that out, and I will get through just as many Twitter questions as I possibly can. All right, now, with all of that out of the way, let's jump into the first topic of the day. And the first topic today comes to us from one of my Patreon supporters, Ben Rayner. And Ben Rayner writes, why is everyone already jumping to conclusions that Justice League is going to lose money? I understand it only made $94 million opening weekend. But look at another movie, Avatar. That only made $77 million in its opening weekend, and that turned out to be the highest grossing movie of all time. Okay, yes, that's true. That Avatar did open to $77 million, and it went on to become the largest grossing film of all time. Now, Ben is, again, one of my Patreon supporters, very active on our Facebook pages and stuff like that. He's a great member of our community. But I'm going to pick on you for just a second, Ben. This email kind of highlights, I think, one of the most frustrating things I find that we, and I'll include myself in this as well, that we as film fans often do. Actually, it's not even just film fans. It's something that a lot of us do all the time with a lot of different things. And that's this. We often will try to find, in a way to try to prove a point, and this is natural. We all do this. I do this. You do this. Ben just did it. I think a lot of us do this. What we do is we do what I call the law of exceptions, where we find the most obscure exception to a generally accepted principle and say, see, that works. So, for example, when, let's say Deadpool comes out, right? And Deadpool is an R-rated comic book movie. And everybody wanted to jump up and down. And everybody knows how much I love Deadpool. But everybody wanted to jump up and down and go, see, R-rated comic book movies is the way to go. Well, what they forgot was that there were about 10 other R-rated comic book movies. And they almost all lost their studio's money. They all, I mean, look at one of the big ones was Watchmen, which was a disaster for Warner Brothers. And that made them cancel a whole bunch of movie projects they had going on. Sometimes, I give the example of this. This is the best way I know how to give an example. Imagine basketball. Now, even if you're not a sports fan, you've seen sports highlights where there's 1 second left on the clock and the guy's like only halfway down the court. So he just heaves up this shot that has 1 in 100 chance of going in, right? But he heaves it up and it goes in and it makes the news and everybody goes crazy. Well, you don't then go, hey, every time you come down the court, you should heave it up from half court. And you go, well, no, those never go in. I saw it on the sports news the other day where it did go in. See, it works. No, that's the exception. There is a much larger body of evidence that points in the opposite direction. So in talking about Justice League, can Justice League be the next Avatar? Can Justice League be that next Avatar, the one that, makes sub $100 million at the box office and then goes on to make big, miraculous, wonderful, record-breaking things at the box office? Well, most people will say no, it opened too small. And then if you want to employ the rule of exception, we go, but look at Avatar, see? It happens. Well, yes, 1 out of every 1,000 times maybe it would happen, but you would be suspect to want to base your, conclusions on that. Is it possible? Sure, it's possible. But also, let's look at the specific situation. Avatar was in a much different situation than, say, Justice League is. Avatar doesn't have 3 films that already came out that totally divided the audience. Man of Steel, Batman vs. Superman, Suicide Squad. Wonder Woman didn't divide the audience, but it has a whole list of films that did divide the audience, were very divisive. The critics didn't like it. The audiences didn't support it in mass and all that kind of stuff. Avatar didn't have that. So that's a totally different situation. Another thing that makes the Avatar situation different was that Avatar was lauded by critics and fans unanimously. When Avatar came out, all the fans went crazy for it. Some of us, it's lost our appeal over time, but at the time, a lot of us went nuts for it, and the critics went nuts for it, and audiences went out in droves to see it, once the word of mouth got out. That's not the situation with Justice League. The critics aren't tripping over themselves praising Justice League. It's getting better response than, say, Batman vs. Superman did. It was a step in the right direction. But, more audiences, I think, today, appreciate a little bit more. But I'm hearing more and more from a lot of people who, it didn't work for them. Okay, that's fine. I've seen it 5 times. I'm going to go see it again when I'm in Vegas. That'll make 6. It works for me, but I understand it doesn't work for everybody. That's fine. So, yes, there was this one example once of a movie that once made under $100 million on its opening weekend and then went on to break $2 billion at the global box office. Therefore, it's perfectly reasonable to assume that that can happen to any movie. No, it can't. And again, we have to be very cognitive of the massive differences in the context. Number 1, Avatar didn't have a history of divisiveness behind it like Justice League does. Number 2, Avatar got huge audience response and huge critic response across the board to buoy it up. Justice League does not have that. So, look, but can Justice League make money? Look, one of the things that Ben is referring to here is that Forbes article. Forbes magazine put out an article that said they're projecting that Justice League is probably going to end up losing $50 to $100 million for the studio. Now, I still believe there's a chance that Justice League will not lose money. Because even by my estimates, I think Justice League only needs to make about 650 million. Okay, so Justice League being a $300 million movie and then spending about $150 million on marketing, Justice League is a film that needs to get around $650 million, I think, to breathe easy knowing that they broke even. And then anything over $650 million is just cabbage. It's great. I still think Justice League can hit those numbers. I don't necessarily subscribe to the idea that Justice League will lose money. However, on the other side of that is the fact that, can you believe we're actually talking about imagine going back 2 years and talking about a Justice League movie and wondering if it'll even hit $650 million. I mean, years ago, we were talking about, will it join the $2 billion club? Now it's a foregone conclusion that it's not going to hit the $1 billion mark. There's just no way. It's not going to hit the $1 billion mark. Now we're talking about whether it can hit 650, maybe 700 million. And I mean, we all would have thought that would be a ludicrous conversation to have a couple of years ago. It's like, of course, Justice League. I mean, it's automatic that Justice League's going to cross $1 billion. The question is, will it hit $2 billion? Now that's not the question. Now the question is, will it even break even? Will it be able to just barely crawl across that finish line and break even at the box office? That's what we're talking about now. And let's hope it does. Look, I understand all of you who had problems with it and didn't like it. I understand it. That's fine. I'm not going to argue with you with the issues you had with it. I totally see them. I accept that. But for me, the good outweighed the bad, and it worked for me. And I found myself, yes, cringing at a couple of things, But I found myself at the end of the day, I'm entertained by Justice League. And here's hoping that there's enough people who are like me that found enough entertainment in Justice League. And again, I'm not saying you're wrong if you don't like it. Not at all. Film is subjective. But I'm hoping there's enough people like me who found that the entertainment value of Justice League outweighed the problems and go back and give it another shot and hopefully boost up that box office to the point that Warner Brothers doesn't actually lose money on this. But it's still remarkable that we're talking about a Justice League movie that is going to be maybe the lowest box office movie of all the DCEU films. Wrap your head around that. There's a very real possibility Justice League makes less money than Suicide Squad, for heaven's sakes. I mean, like, let that sink in for a second. Like, that's just nuts, isn't it? Okay, anyway, let's move on now to the next question. And the next question we have comes to us from Santiago Villa. And Santiago Villa writes, do you think that The Last Jedi will be the biggest box office ever, beating Avatar? Let me rephrase it. Do you still think that The Last Jedi will be the biggest box office ever, beating Avatar? Back in 2015, you claimed that if Episode 7 was good and well received, then Episode 8 will have a good chance of beating Avatar at the box office. Okay, I know what you're talking about, Santiago, but you're misquoting me in a couple of very important things there. First of all, you started off your question, my friend, saying, do you still believe The Last Jedi will beat Avatar? I never believed that The Last Jedi would beat Avatar. I never believed that. What I did say once, back in like a couple of years ago, was that, hey, if The Force Awakens crushes it and people love it and it just causes this big, huge, renewed thing in Star Wars, then it's conceivable that The Last Jedi can become the biggest box office film of all time. And it was a part of a conversation at the time where, you know, the people who I was on a show with were saying, The Force Awakens is going to beat Avatar. And I was saying, no, it is not. The Force Awakens is going to be huge. It's going to make a lot of money, but it is not going to beat Avatar. And sure enough, it didn't. And within that conversation, it was like, okay, but look, if The Force Awakens comes out and it crushes it, it re-sparks that whole culture phenomena and all this kind of stuff, then it's conceivable, then it's possible. We could have a conversation about The Last Jedi beating Avatar. But I certainly never said that The Last Jedi would beat Avatar. I've never believed it would. And if you've watched me at all over the past year, you know I have been saying for over a year, it is not going to beat Avatar. It's just not. But it's also kind of silly that we're setting up this standard of success that for us to consider The Last Jedi successful, it has to become the absolute #1 biggest box office movie worldwide of all time. That's ridiculous that we do that. And it's not just you who's doing Santiago. I mean, I think we all do that. A lot of us do that. We set ridiculous standards of success. So, I mean, it doesn't have to. Star Wars The Last Jedi is probably going to open up as the #2 biggest opening of all time, right behind Star Wars The Force Awakens. Recently, numbers just came out. Now, these are early tracking numbers, and they could go up. Remember, Star Wars The Force Awakens opened with a record-breaking $247 million opening weekend. Right now, the early tracking, and the early tracking can change, but the early tracking has The Last Jedi opening at around $200 million. So right there, it starts off well behind The Force Awakens. It's going to do huge business. It's going to do great business. But no, I still believe, like I've been saying for a year now, I do not believe that The Last Jedi will hit Avatar. But it does not need to beat Avatar to be a resounding, mind-blowing, earth-shaking success. It's going to be one of the highest-grossing films of all time. You know, it's not kind of like the conversation we had with Justice League. It's not a question on if it crosses the $1 billion mark. That's a foregone conclusion. The question is, will it cross the $2 billion mark? I think it may. I also think it may not. I'm not totally sold on it breaking $2 billion, but whatever. At the end of the day, it's going to be one of the highest grossing films of all time. And that is success by any measure. But I know, I do not think it's going to catch Avatar. I just don't think it can. All right, let's move on now to the next question. And the next question today comes to us from Jack Hunter. And Jack Hunter writes, I was looking at the release dates for Coco on IMDB, and I was wondering, why is there such a huge time period for it to be released worldwide? The first release date was October 20th in Mexico, but the last date it gets is released March 16th in Japan. Is that normal for a movie to release around the world within such a huge period of time, especially a Disney Pixar movie? Well, actually, Jack, Yeah, maybe not that wide of a gap, but it is standard these days that movies open at different times around the world. And that's why, and again, I'm bringing this back to Justice League, but it's relevant. Trust me. Here we go. That's why when people get really excited about the international numbers for Justice League, look at how much it made on opening week internationally. The reason that happened is because Justice League did a very rare thing, something I like very much, by the way, but they did a very, very rare thing, which is they basically opened Justice League in all the major international markets on this at the same time. That hardly ever happens. That's extremely rare. So sometimes, like when a movie like Spider-Man Homecoming, right? It hits theaters, it's been in theaters for 3 or 4 weeks, but people know, hey, it still has a lot more international markets to come in, so keep watching the overall worldwide numbers. That number's going to go up. The overall box office total for Spider-Man will go up because there were more international markets still for it to open in. With Justice League, we don't have that saving grace. Justice League did open in every major market already, except for Japan. But that's like the 5th or something largest market. But it's already opened in China. It's already opened in all the biggest major markets. It all opened at the same time. That's why it looks like on its surface, look at this amazing international numbers it had. Well, that's because it opened in all the international markets on the same day, and that hardly ever happens. So there's that. So getting back to Coco. Yeah, it's actually totally normal. I'm not saying it's normal to have like a 5-month gap between when it first opens in one country and then when it opens in its final major market. It's not necessarily usually that big of a gap, but, and especially for Disney, because Disney will quite often open like their Marvel films like in international markets before they even open in the US, and then a whole bunch to come afterwards. So yes, it is kind of normal practice. I don't like it. I like the way Warner Brothers did it with Justice League. I like just boom, every market, same day, or at least in the same couple of days, in that same time frame of reference, put it all out there at the same time, boom, the world gets it all at once. That's the way I like it. I wish more studios would do it that way. Now, I do see the advantage of doing it the other way because, you know, you open it a couple of markets, it gets big word of mouth going, it gets big buzz if audiences loved it and all that kind of stuff, and then hopefully that helps to boost up the next international markets that it opens up in, which then, you know, maybe then it opens in the US and it gets even bigger thing, and then they open it in the UK, and then they open it, you know, in other European nations, and then it opens in Japan and gets boosted by all that. I get it. I do. I understand it. But my preference as a fan, also it would help kill piracy, is just opening it all up at once on the same day across the world. I love that philosophy. Again, I see the advantages of doing it the other way. I do, I get it. So no skin off my nose, but I kind of prefer the way that Warner Brothers did it with Justice League, but we'll have to ultimately see which one turns out. And by the way, if you have not seen Coco yet, my God, go see Coco. It is so freaking good. It is so freaking good. I just put up my video yesterday of my top 10 favorite Pixar films, and Coco ended up being number 5. It's already at number 5 for me for my all-time favorite Pixar films. Go and check that out. It's a lot of fun. Okay, let's move on now to the next. We got 2 more email questions to do, and then I'm going to go to your live Twitter questions. The next question comes to us from our good friend Ashen. And Ashen writes in, John, I'm a big fan. Well, thank you so much, Ashen. But why are you always defensive about DC? Marvel gives us many great comic book movies ever made. I don't know why you say in your show that one day DC will kick Marvel's ass. Why? Marvel is getting bigger and bigger day by day and is more popular than DC. All right. Well, first of all, I really wish that all the people who say I am a Marvel shill and all the people who say I am a DC shill, I really wish you guys would get together and coordinate a little bit because you're making it very confusing for me. I never know who am I supposed to be collecting my paychecks from. Am I getting paychecks from Warner Brothers? Am I getting paychecks from Disney? I'm not sure. One day I get blasted with tweets that I'm a DC hater, and the next day I get blasted with tweets that I, ride DC's jock. Hey, I just can't win. That's fine. I never really cared about winning because, damn it, I'm John Campea. By nature, I win. I don't know where that came from. Anyway, so let's get that out of the way. The other thing, I should make a t-shirt that says that. Damn it, I'm John Campea. By nature, I win. That'd be kind of fun. And go buy that shirt. Buy that shirt. Buy it by the millions. So anyway, the other thing is this, though. I do not say that DC is going to kick Marvel's ass. That's not what I'm saying. All I ever try to do is try to bring some balance to the conversation. Okay? That's all I ever try to do is bring some balance to the conversation. The balance of the conversation is this, is like, okay, Marvel gets ahead. And yeah, look, everybody, you'd have to be a blind man not to see that Marvel is ahead right now. Sure. I mean, it doesn't matter which films you prefer over the other. Obviously, when it comes to the market, Marvel is ahead. Fine. All I try to do is bring some rational thought back to the conversation. Say, look, just because Marvel's ahead right now does not mean that's the way it's going to be for now, tomorrow, and forever. Amen. Remember back in the days when the only social media site out there, or the only social site out there is MySpace. Nothing will ever touch MySpace. Remember that? Where's MySpace today? And I'm not saying that's what's going to happen. I'm simply saying that, look, when you look at a property like DC, and you may or may not like or love a lot of moves that Warner Brothers has made, the fact of the matter is Warner Brothers cranks out a lot of great films. And they win a lot of Academy Awards. And they've got some very smart people there. On top of that, they have the IP rights to some of the greatest comic book characters of all time, where they're talking Superman and Batman. I mean, right there, you're probably talking number 1 and number 2. You're talking Wonder Woman and Green Lantern and Aquaman and Hawkman and like a whole plethora of different heroes. So when you've got that situation in place, I think you would be naive not to stop and say, okay, look, this could very well turn around fairly quickly. It could. I mean, they could be, we're usually just 2 or 3 movies away from the tide completely turning. Look, if Justice League had come out, and even though I like it, I know that a lot of people didn't, fine. But if Justice League had come out and crushed it with the vast majority of the audience, the vast majority of the critics, and made big money at the box office and all that kind of stuff, that would have been 2 films in a row. That would have been Wonder Woman that crushed it, and it would have been Justice League that crushed it, and now you'd be looking at some momentum. Okay, didn't happen. Fine. My point is just always is that it's never that far away from it possibly happening. It's never that far away from probably happening. But I have not sat here and said that, in 5 years, DC will be kicking Marvel's ass. No, I've never said that. What I've said is there are certain things that could align, that if they did, we could be singing a totally different song. We could be looking at a completely different narrative than we are now. All I'm trying to do is saying, hey, yes, in the midst of what is happening now, let's take a step back, let's take a breath, and understand the bigger picture, and bring a little bit of rational thought to it. I'm certainly not saying DC, like starting next week, DC, like once Aquaman comes out, that's it. It's death to Marvel because of Aquaman. I'm not saying that. I'm just saying that when you got great comic book characters in the hands of a traditionally great studio, in a market that can ebb and flow and change just like that, you're never that far away from a change of the tide. And I'm just saying it's possible. That's all I'm ever saying is that it's possible. Anyway, thanks a lot for the question, man. All right, let's move on to the next one. And the next question comes to us from, and this is the last one before I go to the tweets, Vamsi Santi, who writes, hey, John, fan from India. Well, thank you so much. I love all these emails I get from India. I never knew people watched this show from India, and I'm always kind of floored by how many people do. So thank you so much for writing in, Vamsi. My question is, what do you think of the upcoming Battle Angel movie by Rodriguez and Cameron? I think it's a bad idea to make another anime adaptation after what happened recently with Death Note and Ghost in the Shell. Also, what mistakes do you think studios are making while adapting them into their live action? Well, first of all, one of the things, look, I have been waiting for Alita Battle Angel for years. For those of you guys who've been watching me ever since my movie blog days, whenever something would come out about James Cameron's working on this, and I want him to do Alita Battle Angel, because he's had the rights for a long time, right? And that's what I've been waiting for him to do. So now they're moving ahead with it. Important to understand that by the time Ghost in the Shell came out, I believe they were already done shooting Alita Battle Angel. So it's not like that. It's not as if Ghost in the Shell came out and then they had an opportunity to think, oh, should we still go ahead and make this movie? No, the movie was shot. It's been in post-production for a while now. There's an infamous episode of Mailbag that me and Josh McCouga did once, where we were talking about, man, I don't even know if they're still making this movie. I hadn't heard anything about it. I don't even know if they're still making Alita Battle Angel or not. And then a bunch of viewers wrote in, John, they wrapped production on it last month, and I had totally forgotten about it. So this movie has actually been finished, its production, for a while. At least it's shooting. It still has a lot of post-production to do. So it's why, like, is it a mistake for them to do it? Well, it was already done. So there's no point crying over that spilt milk. That was already done. It's the movie's coming. And I think it's got a lot of potential. The thing that makes me wonder about Alita Battle Angel, and I never would have imagined 6-7 years ago me saying something like this, but the thing that gives me pause about Alita Battle Angel, and I'm not saying it's going to suck, nothing like that. I'm just saying gives me pause, makes me a little concerned, is the fact that Robert Rodriguez is directing it. And Robert Rodriguez, was one of the hottest, most fresh take filmmakers out there, but he has put out a number of bad movies in recent years. And you know what? I owe some of my livelihood to Robert Rodriguez because, as some of you know, I used to work in visual effects. I was working at a very small visual effects company. And one of the first big gigs, one of the first major motion pictures that our company ever got to work on was Robert Rodriguez's Spy Kids 2. Our company got to work on Spy Kids 2, which kept our company doors open for a long time. So thank you, Robert Rodriguez. We owe him a huge debt of gratitude. But, honestly, to me, he has not been great. I mean, he did, what was it, Planet Terror? The one half of the Grindhouse thing. I actually thought his movie, Planet Terror, was better than Quentin Tarantino's movie, Death Proof. I didn't like Death Proof. Death Proof had some great moments, like some all-time great moments. But overall, as a film, I didn't like. To me, it's Quentin Tarantino's worst film. Amongst all of his genius films, I don't like Death Proof. And I thought Planet Terror was actually pretty good. But then you start looking at a lot of the films he's done here. And I brought up a bunch here. Like, first of all, the Machete movies, I think, have been terrible. The concept was fantastic. The first 10 minutes of the first Machete movie, I loved, and then the movie just went to crap after that, and the sequel was just as crap. Then you're like, it's Sin City, A Dame to Kill For. I thought that was bad. Spy Kids 4, I thought was bad. So I haven't seen anything from him in a while that would make me go, oh my gosh, I'm excited to see a Robert Rodriguez film again. There's something that's getting my juices flowing for it. That's the part that kind of makes me a little bit concerned. Look, James Cameron is not directing this film. James Cameron is very, very, very busy with his 17 Avatar movies that he's making, but I'm sure he has a hand in it. And it's a great material. It's great subject matter. As long as they understand that they are not making this movie, you cannot make this movie for the anime audience, because the anime audience ain't going to be enough to save it. And I think the anime audience, what they really want is the anime, not some live action Hollywood version of it. So you got to make this movie for the general audience while still being true to the spirit of it. And we'll see how that all goes. But yeah, I mean, I'm curious too. After seeing what happened with Death Note, which was bad, I really did not. I was wanting to like Death Note so much, and Death Note was such a disappointment. After the letdown that was Ghost in the Shell, and I didn't think Ghost in the Shell was terrible, but it was a letdown. It was nowhere near the expectations and the hopes that I had for it. And I'm sure a lot of you guys, you're in the same boat with me on that. It'll be interesting to see where Alita Battle Angel come in. All I know is I've been waiting for this one for a long time. I think this one is very well poised for a live action adaptation. Much more than, say, Akira's. I'm not saying it's better than Akira, but when you really look at the story and the way it's laid out, I believe Alita Battle Angel is better positioned to be a live action movie than even Akira is. So we'll see if that actually works out and how that plays out. All right, guys, listen, I am now going to go to the live questions. If you guys are watching live, I'm going to now take some time to take your live thoughts, comments, and questions. Simply start tweeting them to me at the Twitter at John Campea. Just start out a tweet, put at John Campea, and tweet it into me. Now, before we get to that, it is time, even though I'm on vacation, I still have to do my little commercial break because it's what keeps the lights on around here. My Patreon campaign is what the whole reason I'm able to do these shows in the first place. So we'll be back in 1 minute after this commercial break. For those of you who have followed me for any period of time, you guys know that I made the decision recently to leave the corporate overlords. I no longer wanted to work for corporations. I wanted to be an independent content creator. And the only way I've been able to do that is by the support of my Patreon supporters. So what I would like to do is to ask you guys who watch my shows, who spend any amount of time with me every single month, to consider going over to www.patreon.com/John Campea. There you'll get all the information about what exactly does it mean to be a Patreon supporter of mine? What does being a Patreon supporter do for helping to make sure that shows like this one and all the other shows I do here on my channel can actually be produced? And on top of that, what benefits are there to being a Patreon supporter? And maybe if you guys can check that out, if you decide you want to be one of my Patreon supporters, that would be awesome. And if you don't, that's perfectly fine too. I'm just happy that you guys have decided to be here today and be a fellow movie fan and join us in the conversation. So go and check out the website, see if you want to become a Patreon supporter. And now let's get back. And we are back. Thank you guys. A special thank you to all of you guys who are already Patreon supporters. You guys are the reason this show is even able to exist and why I'm able to do these shows. So thank you so much. All right, guys, I said we would go to your live Twitter questions, and we're going to do that right now. So let's see if this actually works today. I'm surprised the show hasn't crashed yet. All right, the first Twitter question comes to us from C. Corbett7, who writes, John, Quentin Tarantino, better writer or better director? Damn, good question. Okay, well, obviously, it goes without saying that he's awesome at both. It's hard to make a distinction between the two of them because he takes his own words and who knows what he does to them on stage. But you know what? I'm going to say writer. I think he's an even better writer than he is a great director. And he is a great director. I just think his writing is really kind of spectacular. As a matter of fact, I'll go back to his last film, which was Hateful Eight, where I thought his script was actually better than the movie kind of executed. And because I thought the script was great. And the movie itself, I don't feel like it quite lived up to the script. So just on that basis alone, because it's so dead even, he's so good as a director, so good as a screenwriter, which one do you pick? Because of Hateful Eight, I will go as a writer. I'm sure a lot of you guys have different opinions on that, so leave me your thoughts below. Okay, let's see this. This next one comes to us from Slim Jimmy, who writes, Hey, John, checked out Jim and Andy, The Great Beyond. I have not seen it yet. I have watched a lot of the marketing for it. For those of you who don't know what that is, I believe it's on Netflix. And it's a documentary that looks at Jim Carrey as he made that Andy Kaufman movie, Man on the Moon. And it looks fascinating. I'm a sucker already for documentaries and stories about what goes on behind the scenes of any one movie. I mean, whether it's John Schnepp's The Death of Superman Lives What Happened, or why am I forgetting the name of that one documentary that looked at Apocalypse Now? I can't even remember the name of it now. But anyway, I'm a sucker for those types of documentary stories. This looks fascinating. I have not seen it yet, but I cannot wait to see it. Okay, let's try this one. This one comes to us from I Am Zareen Uden, who writes, John, what made Avatar a $2.7 movie and how it crossed $2 billion overseas out of mind? I'll be honest with you, Zahir, I'm not quite sure what it is you're asking. Maybe take another crack at wording that and I'll be able to better kind of grasp what it is you're trying to ask. Sorry about that. I mean, I'm slow. I only had like 30 minutes of sleep last night. So sorry about that. Let's see. Next one comes to us from Tom Comiskey, who writes, John, do you think Joss Whedon getting a Harry Potter sequel with the original cast would be viewed as a promotion over filming Batgirl? I think if the universe exists that Justice League 2 happens, I think him getting Justice League 2 right from the start would be seen as a promotion. Him doing a Harry Potter sequel with the original cast, I'm not quite sure how that would be viewed by a lot of people, to be honest with you. All right, next one comes to us from Matt Light 19, who writes, John, have you seen First They Killed My Father and the Villainess? Yes, both are great films. Nope, haven't seen them. Sorry about that, man. Let's see. This next one comes to us from Elijah 1989-930, writes, John, hey, John, do you think that Logan is still the best comic book movie of the year? I still think it's the best movie of the year. Like, nothing else has come close. As far as comic book movies go, nothing else comes close. Nothing even sniffs the shoes of Logan. I really like Spider-Man Homecoming. I really like Thor Ragnarok. I really like Wonder Woman. But nothing comes close to Logan, in my opinion. You may have a different thought. That's totally cool. That's the great thing about films, is that we all have different opinions about them. We're still on the same team and we're still friends. But to me, like, every other comic book movie sucks this year compared to Logan. And there have been great comic book movies this year, but they just flat out suck compared to Logan. And like, who would have thought that we'd be saying, like, a couple years ago, hey guys, in 2017, the best comic book movie of the year is neither a DC film nor a Marvel film. I think a lot of people would be like losing their minds. What are you talking about? But no, it's Fox. Fox made the best comic book movie this year by far. And in my opinion, it's still the best movie of the year. Now, a couple of movies have come close for me personally to Logan, but for me right now, Logan is still up there. And I got a feeling the one that might bump it out is another Hugh Jackman film called The Greatest Showman. That's coming out soon. To me, they're some of the most wonderful trailers I've seen all year. Everything screams glorious about this movie. I cannot wait to watch this movie. But there's a few ones. The Post, the Steven Spielberg film with Meryl Streep and Tom Hanks, that could give Logan a run for its money. But as far as just pure, simple, best comic book movie goes, nothing else remotely even is in the same discussion as far as I'm concerned with Logan. Let's see. Alex Shalom writes, John, why are people fans of Pixar but not live action studios like A24 or WB? It's because of quality or something else. What are you talking about? A24 and WB have lots of fans. Everything's allowed to have fans and not fans of other things. So I don't know what you're talking about when we say, how come Warner Brothers doesn't have fans and A24 doesn't have fans? A24 definitely has fans. Warner Brothers definitely has fans. Why maybe does Pixar have more? Well, you're talking about generations that have passed down these films. And if you look at that top 10 list of Pixar films that I did the other day, you'll get an understanding. You start to get a sense about how ridiculously good that studio is. Because when you're talking about Toy Story 1, didn't even get on my top 10 list. That's nuts. That's insane. And yet it didn't. So that's the type of quality stuff that Pixar just cranks out. But, you know, live action studios absolutely have fans. Let's see. This next one comes to us from Eben Law, who writes, John, do you play video games anymore? Thoughts on a Metal Gear movie? Well, the Metal Gear movie, yes, I still play video games, but I'm a PC gamer, really more. I don't play a lot of console games. Like, I've never been able to get my brain wired for using console controllers. I'm much more at home using a mouse and keyboard, especially for first-person shooters. Anyway, Metal Gear is a movie that has, I've lost count of how many times some like significant announcement comes out about it, and then we hear nothing. And then some time passes, then now this is happening, things are moving forward, and then we hear nothing. I think it has potential to be a good movie, but then again, almost everything, you know, just about anything has the potential to be a good movie. Does this have the potential to be a good movie? Sure it does. It also has the potential to be an absolutely horrible train wreck of a movie, much like Assassin's Creed did. But hey, you never know. Okay, let's move on to the next one. The next one comes to us from Elijah AUA, who writes, John, if Zack Snyder is out of the DCEU, I would love for him to do anime because he does his best visuals, like Dragon Ball Z. Hey, look, one of the things, I think even if you're somebody who has not liked Zack Snyder's DCEU films, I think one of the things that you have to acknowledge is that Zack Snyder is one hell of a visual storyteller. He knows how to use his storytelling skills and use his visuals to tell his stories. Now, you may have some critiques of him about some of the other areas of filmmaking, but something like a Dragon Ball Z, look, I don't think there should be another Dragon Ball Z movie, but if they did and Zack Snyder was directing it, damn right, I'd be curious. I'd be really curious about that to see what he does with that. Okay, let's try this one. This one comes to us from Cricketing Mad, who writes, John, best replacement for Henry Cavill if he ever leaves the DC. Look, guys, you know my answer to this. You all know what I'm going to say to this. I don't care. As long as it's a great actor. This whole notion that there's only one guy who can play a role is a notion I completely dismiss. There are lots of great actors out there. There's somebody out, like you all know how crazy I am for Henry Cavill as Superman. But even I will say, hey, look, if they reboot and they have to put somebody else in it, Fine. As long as they go out and get a great actor, it can be anybody. So I'm fine as long as they get a great actor. Okay, this next one comes to us from Adrian Uza. I can't pronounce that. Hey, John, you never said that DC should beat Marvel, but my question is, what are your actual opinions on both? Which do you prefer? Look, honestly, if I had to say, what do I prefer in the movies, as far as which movies have come out right now and have already come out and played in theaters? Look, if you have watched all of my DCEU reviews, Man of Steel, which is in my top 10 of all time list, top 10 comic book movies of all time, not my top 10 favorite movies of all time, but my top 10 comic book films of all time list, Man of Steel's in there. Batman vs. Superman, Suicide Squad, Wonder Woman, and Justice League. I am one of the only critics alive, and I don't know what this says about me. I am one of the only critics alive who has given every single one of the DCEU films a positive review. You'll be very hard-pressed to find many others who have. And I don't know if that's a good thing or a bad thing about me, but there it is. I just got to be honest. And my honest thing is, I've enjoyed the films when I watch them. But, you know, I will say that as of right now, if I had to weigh, you know, which ones have I preferred more? Well, if you're talking of Avengers, and you're talking Captain America Civil War, and you're talking Doctor Strange, and you're talking Winter Soldier, and you're talking Ant-Man, and you're talking all these other films, to me right now, I'll just be open and honest about it, the scale tips for Marvel, clearly. But I also believe that that scale can tip differently very quickly. And that Warner Bros. Has enough going for it that 3 years from now, it could be a totally different conversation. But right now, I'd have to say, if I'm just going to be honest about it, it's probably the Marvel stuff. Let's see. All right, guys, you know what? That will do it for me. We're at 40 minutes here. I'm probably waking everybody else up in the hotel because I'm speaking so loudly doing this here in Las Vegas at 8 o'clock in the morning. Thank you, guys, for putting up with, you know, the lack of the production environment and the lack of the high quality and the lack of my regular studio. I really appreciate that you guys hung in there with me today. It means a lot to me. I love talking movies, even when I'm on vacation. And we, of course, will be back again tomorrow talking movies again. So thank you guys so much. Remember, guys, make sure you subscribe to my YouTube channel. I think I'm only like 400 subscribers away from hitting 100,000 subscribers. I thought it was going to take till at least like October, November, maybe August, maybe December of 2018 before I got to 100,000 subscribers. And it looks like we're just like a week away or less than a week away. Do me a favor, if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, click on the subscribe button. Help me cross that 100,000 subscriber mark. Make sure you click the thumbs up button on this thing, guys. Jump down to the comment section. Leave your thoughts and opinions on any or all the topics we discussed here today. Remember, we're all on the same team. We're all film fans. Even if we have radically different ideas about certain movies, that's the fun thing about being a movie fan. Don't take what should be a fun thing about being a movie fan and turn it into a pain in the ass about being a movie fan. Make it fun. Anyway, that's my encouragement to you guys for today. So, guys, that will do it for me for today, guys. My name is John Campea. Thank you so much for joining me. And until the next video, bye-bye.